Wait, am I muted?
We might have to redo that.
Start over.
Start over.
Oh, wait, I know.
I think we're gonna start. Take two. Yeah. I'll work on it. Oh, sorry.
So I'm muted on here.
Your computer mic is on? How are you?
Good, how are you?
Oh, no.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Okay, we're gonna do take two. because we have to-
Dr. Ellis, do you hear us?
No, I have expensive. Pick up.
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Great.
Yes.
Oh,
All right.
thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ellis.
You're welcome.
Tanaya, are you on the call? Tanaya.
Yeah, but Dr. Ellis, did you hear our roll call? No,
No,
okay,
so-
we're starting again. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Natomas Charter School Board of Directors meeting for September. I will call us to order at the 5:38. Roll call, Karen Harding Davis. Here. Sean King. Gina Lee.
Here.
Dr. Mejorado.
Here.
Preeti Merchant. Here. Jennifer Morgan, I'm here. Ashante Norton.
She's going to be joining from her phone. She's having trouble on her computer.
Okay. John Poor.
Here.
Okay. Tanaya Safai.
Here.
Thank you. Hi, Tanaya. Welcome. Crystal Law.
I don't see Crystal on the call.
Okay. Ileana Mercado.
Ileana messaged me. She's having some technical difficulties, but she'll be joining us.
Okay, great. All right. Let's see. Do we have hearing of the public for items on the closed session agenda?
Nothing received.
Nothing?
So then receive on the online form and none in the room.
Okay. And right now we will adjourn to closed session to consider and/or take action upon any of the following. Conference with real property negotiators pursuant to Government Code 54956.8. Administrative representatives Dr. Joe Wood and Anita Schwab. Agency negotiator Charlie Leo. Property APN 225-006-021-0000. Located at Del Paso Road in Sacramento, California.
Okay, Dad, I'm gonna need help draining this snow.
In already?
Pardon?
Is the pasta in the water yet?
No, it's done cooking.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if you started it.
No, and then it says to save,
Some of the water?
cover up the water,
Quarter or quarter cup?
a quarter of the
Okay,
water.
well, you can always add more water if it needs to dry.
You know.
Okay. We will reconvene open session at 6:17. No action taken during closed session. Start us off with our student reports. We have 3 new student reps. Tanaya from Leading Edge, do you want to start us off? Share your update.
Hi.
Hi there. It's nice to meet you.
Hi.
So, do I just
Yep.
start?
You're ready to go.
Okay. Hi, my name is Tanaya Safi, and I'm the new Leading Edge representative. Coming back to school has been a thrill, and students are participating, having fun in class, and all the good stuff. This year has gotten off to a great start, and students are following COVID-19 protocols. We had our first pep rally on August 13th, and the web leaders did a great job at getting the students involved, and it was a blast. Even a student sang a song for us. Leadership has also started. The whole team is working really hard on coming up with new events, and opening ideas for fun activities with the 7th graders and 6th graders in the whole school. And leadership has also started as well. They had their first meeting last week with leadership as well. And we also started we finished our beginning of the year iReady testing from the 23rd through the 27th. And the sports and clubs are well on their way. The volleyball and football team, 6th grade team, had their first game Thursday and are going to have their next game Tuesday, tomorrow. And the rest of the volleyball and football teams have started practices for their upcoming games. Pride Club has started meetings, yearbook, math club, and knitting club. They've all also started accepting applicants and had a few meetings as well. And then picture day happened last Tuesday. Everyone looked awesome. And on campus, I was observing, and I would like to recommend a few suggestions or changes I thought would be beneficial for the school and its students, like adding either a language and doing a collaboration with PFA and the Leading Edge, like for enrichments and after-school programs. But next month, I'll have more information from stakeholders, whether this will be a popular choice or not. And, thank you for your time. I really appreciate the board and the teachers letting the students come back in person and creating the learning environment that I know a lot of the students love.
Awesome. Well done, Tanaya. Thank you.
Thanks, Tanaya. I'll be excited to listen to all the information you bring back next month. Next one, Crystal. Is Crystal here or?
Crystal is not here. She did submit a board report that's presented on the screen here.
Okay, Karen, would you like to share it? It's your academy, actually. Karen, I'm gonna have to get up.
Oh, would you?
There.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Hello, everyone. I'm Karen Harding Davis, and I have a junior at PFAA, McKenna Harding Davis, and here are the updates. Middle school social was on August 27th. 6th grade and freshman ASB class representatives have been elected. ARC dual enrollment classes started, English 300, psychology, diversity, and film. And then we also had PFA Club Fair. It's happening actually on September 3rd. And what I need starts September 13th during advisory, which was today. And advisory cup and class meetings on September 20th, ASB bulletin launch, and Gone Missing opening night is September 28th. And finally, COVID testing encouraged among the student body.
All right, thank you, Karen. And Ileana is not here.
Ileana sends her sincere apologies. She's been having technical issues. We're not quite sure if it's on her end or our end or whatnot, but she has tried her hardest to get on.
No worries.
And she's having
Thank you, Ileana. We look forward to meeting you next month. And thank you for your report. I will read it, but please note I'm gonna actually be able to stay on my seat. All right, so students are adjusting into the on-campus routine this year, which is great news to all of us. We had Link Crew orientation where they had games, snacks, and closing out, making calls to parents and students, sending out emails and checking in. Fantastic. There was freshman and new student orientation. They took a run through Schoology, and then looks like they had an explanation, make sure everybody's understanding the format at VLA. Spirit Week, Tuesday they had Picture Day and Pajama Day, which probably made some pretty interesting pictures. On Wednesday they had Decade Day, Thursday was Marvel Disney Day, Friday was Horror Day. Probably made some interesting pictures there too. Back to school bash, games including trivia, Jenga with questions, escape room, a movie, and more. They also had, no doubt what drew everyone there, treats and snacks. So fantastic.
And I would just,
Thank you, Juliana.
And I don't know if you can hear me, but I was just going to add that we had a great turnout actually for our back to school bash. We had over 25, 30 kids. So about a quarter of VLA student body was present, which was a great culture building opportunity. So I just want to give a special shout out to our leadership team.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Okay, moving on. Hearing of the public for items not on the agenda.
Nothing received via the public comment form.
Thank you, Ms. Holm. And hearing of the public for items on the agenda.
Also nothing received via the public comment form.
Okay. Any comments on tonight's agenda?
None.
Okay. So I will ask for a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
And for the record, I'd just like to state that I'm calling Ashante Norton to have her on speakerphone because she's having trouble with accessing the meeting again. Ms. Norton, are you on the call now?
I am.
Okay, we're gonna have you on speakerphone. Thank you.
Okay.
So moved. Second. I have a second. Okay. That's about the agenda, not the speakerphone thing. Just wondering. Roll call vote.
I didn't get the second. Oh, sorry, thank you.
Roll call vote. Let's start with Ashante.
Oh, you gotta catch me up. What am I voting on?
Approval of the agenda.
Oh, I better abstain because I wasn't at the last meeting.
Okay. Okay. Jennifer Morgan, I'm a yes. Preeti?
Yes.
Maria?
Yes.
Gina?
Yes.
Sean King?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Okay. Moving right along. I have a question for myself on the consent items. I believe I have to abstain due to the first item there. Is that correct?
No.
No, I don't have to. Okay, cool. Let's see, consent items. Any questions on the consent items? Otherwise, we'll approve them as a group. Okay, may I have a motion to approve the consent items for tonight's meeting?
I shall consent or agree.
What she said.
Pretty's the first.
Preeti just made the motion, Ms. Norton, for the consent agenda.
Thank you.
Okay, may I have a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Gina. Roll call vote. Let's start with Karen,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Gina,
Yes.
Maria,
Yes.
Preeti,
Yes.
Jennifer, I'm a yes. Ashante?
Yes.
Okay. Moving right along. Action items. We have unaudited financial actuals for 2020-2021 school year from Anita.
Okay, and Dee's gonna pull that up for me. Yeah,
Do you want your presentation, Anita, or the stuff that's in the packet?
the presentation. And then, okay, let's get started. Good, next slide. All right. Okay, so for this agenda, when we present our financial statements, it's a little bit a little different format than we do have for our interim report. So I'm going to start off by giving you a snapshot of revenues and expenditures. And when we get to the summary overview, that's when I'm going to walk you through the packet. And this is required documents that eventually get to CDE for unaudited actuals. And then we'll go over some financial highlights. We accomplished a lot, even though we went through COVID last year, and then talk about cash flow notes to the financial statements, and then what's next in the budget cycle process. So see if you can turn it. So I'm going through, starting with revenues and stuff, as I was putting together this slide and looking at last year, there was a lot that happened, and we had started off the 2021 year basically with, the governor's January 2020 proposal had proposed that we would get a COLA of 2.31%. And then when we were wrapping up to adopt the budget, we were looking at a surprise in the May revise where we were going to be getting a 10% reduction in those costs and stuff. Built the budget on that. We were projecting deficit spending. However, the good news is that once the state adopted their budget and stuff, they removed that 10% reduction, and they also did not fund the COLA on paper. So that's where we came to this unfunded COLA. So we ended up with 2021 getting a zero COLA on there. And so that's what they call flat funding for last year. Also, what they did when the state did adopt the budget is that they capped all school districts and charter schools ADA based on 2019-20 P2's attendance report. Unless you filed a SB 820 application for growth, and in order to do that, you had to have planned in your adopted budget at the time for some growth. Because this kind of took everybody by surprise. So we submitted an application and we were approved for that. And we did approve just for a little bit of growth. So I listed on here our CBEDS enrollment. We actually grew last year to 1937 total students. However, our funded ADA was based on 1,811 based on that approved SB 820 application that we had. So that actually was a result of about 18 additional ADA for us, which was great on here. So the next slide, Ziva, if you want to go through there. This is a snapshot of our revenues. And so it's by major category. Our local control funding formula sources right here is about 16 million. So that includes the per pupil spending based on an average of $9,027 for the 1,811 ADA that we got. You'll also see federal revenues. Normally, we don't have a lot of federal revenues, but that is the CARES Act money that was carrying over into that last year. Also, other student revenues, we also got a little bit more CARES Act money, and we started to get in-person learning funds as well as expanded learning opportunity funds as well. So our revenue, state and federal revenues are a little bit higher than normal. And then also as a reminder of that $2.2 million, we have that STRS on behalf phantom entry that we have to book for the state, which is of that amount, it's over 744,000. So it's a significant chunk and it's offset in the expenditures over there. And then local revenues in that category is 1.3 million, but of that, $1 million is related to our SELPA funds, and it's in the local area because it goes to the SELPA state revenue and they transfer it over to us. So our total revenues for last year was over 20.8 million. And Ziba, if you can do the next slide here, this pie graph right here kind of shows just the different parts. Again, it's based on the 1811 average daily attendance, and our total revenue sources for LCFF is about 78% of that 20.8 million. Normally it's a little bit higher, but because of the CARES Act funds for federal and state and the ELO and the in-person grant money that started coming in, it dropped down to 78%. And of that 78%, the Education Protection Act was 15% of that total, and property taxes run about 4% of that 78%. Approximately 2% comes out of lottery. For state funds, it's about 5% of this last year's budget. And then the remaining chunk was 15%, and that's where you'll get the federal and the miscellaneous state and local revenues coming in. Thank you. So this is a snapshot of our total expenditures by major category. And you can see within the employee benefits, that 4.4 million, that has the state STRS on behalf entry of that 744,000. We did spend over $18 million. And if you go to the next slide, the categories here, you can see that. Sorry, it's not that big of a graph. Salary and benefits now are about 81%. You can remember that previously we were in the high 70s and stuff. So now we're entering the 80% range, and the remaining 19% makes up the other categories of supplies, services, and capital outlay. Of that other expenditure categories, we pay approximately 2% in our NUSD memorandum of understanding fees, pretty much, which is basically our oversight of facility costs on there. So see if I can. Okay, So this is a summary, kind of comparing estimated actuals to actuals in our variance column. Before I do that, I wanted to take a minute to go over the document that was sent out and put in the board packet. I don't know, Ziva, if you want to just flip over to that, or, I mean, I guess, but this is, again, a different format than what we normally use for interim. So if you scroll down, it has a table of contents and an executive summary, which is kind of some highlights for the year. So if you can keep scrolling down to page 3, I wanted to talk about our official financial statements. So this is the certification page for our financial report, which is the alternative form for independent charter schools that don't elect to do the SACS financials. So we will be signing off on this and sending it to our sponsoring district, Natomas Unified, and then it'll go to the county and CDE from there. So starting, just if you can go down a little bit here, what's different about this one is it actually breaks out unrestricted and restricted and the total column here for that. Our financials, we usually lump them all together. And it starts off with your revenues, and see that you can just scroll down. It'll continue with expenditures. And then on page 6, keep going down, it's up to you. It'll give you total expenditures, net increase or decrease to fund balance, and then it goes into what our beginning fund balance was and our ending fund balance components in the categories that they want us to report to the state. If you go down, this is what is our balance sheet. So based on our assets and liabilities and total fund balance, that's what makes up that $13 million. See if you can keep scrolling down. Also required is we need to report if we had any, used any federal funds for any capital outlay, and we have to estimate that. As of last year, no, we didn't. We also have to pull out community service expenditures that we did. That didn't apply to us there. And that's all for this last calculation, which is for the Education Secondary Act that we have to do, ESSA. It's a calculation for a maintenance of effort to make sure that we're spending at least as much as we did the prior year for students. This is something that is required for all schools that get a lot of federal funds, but it's also required for charter schools, even if you don't get federal funds, so that they can get that per pupil estimate on there. So that calculation, after they back out community services and stuff, came out to about $17 million in expenditures that we're reporting. And then this is something that you're kind of familiar where the pale yellow column is our estimated actuals. We're really focusing on the blue, which is our unaudited actuals. And then as a reminder, what we reported in pink for the adopted budget and the multi-year out on that. And then see if you can keep scrolling down. We have the board summary. The next one is a little bit more details by object code. And if you go to the next page, this is a breakout by academy. And this is the next 2 pages. Yeah. And keep going. That's the last page for the academy. And then we also report the final update on the Education Protection Act, which ended up to be $6.2 million. Interesting enough, normally the EPA funds that we get, that's the sales and use tax funds that we get as part of our LCFF funding. It shot up to almost, it was crazy. We didn't find out until June, 70% of our total LCFF funds. It kind of caught everybody by surprise on that, the way they did that, because we were projecting to get about 38%. And then by the time the state did their P2 apportionment calculations, it ends up being 70% of that, which is really unusual. So when you get more of the EPA funds, you get less state aid and also property tax are factored in there. So that's an update for our final numbers there. This is required by law. This is an MOU fee schedule, just historical information on what we paid Natomas Unified by category. And then lastly is just our financial profit and loss financial trends. So you can see historically what our revenues and expenditures have been over the several years. That piece there. So going back to the slide presentation for the summary, this is just the bird's eye view on here. You'll see that comparing revenues for estimated versus actuals, the variance was just plus 31,000. And so there's a lot of things that make up that 31,000, but the bulk of it is about 11,000 was additional LCFF funds by the time they did the final calculation. And then also increase in lottery rates when we projected the fourth quarter. The state had increased those rates a little bit, and that's pretty much the bulk of those. When you look at expenditures, we have a large savings of 1.4 million. So with the expenditures that we had and the additional revenues, our fund balance projection, the excess revenues over expenditures for 2021 increased by 1.5 million. And so some of the highlights that I wanted to give to you on that is like, okay, what makes up that on there? And so with LCFF, the supplemental dollars, we underspent about $53,000 in that particular area, but we are still able to meet that minimum that we were supposed to spend. In the special ed area, that was also a large savings, over $326,000. That goes in all categories, salaries all the way through expenditures. But the bulk of that was for contracted services. So we didn't have to use as much as what was planned for on there. For maintenance and restricted maintenance, this is more of our repairs and stuff because we are good tenants. We pay a lot to get this stuff done. We saved about $39,000, and I think that was due to COVID because we started off with distance learning, went to hybrid and stuff. So not a lot of repairs had to be made during that year. The largest chunk, over almost $900,000, $875,000, $29, is restricted programs that are going to carry over to next year. So that is all of our restricted funds, including some of the CARES Act, in-person learning grant money, ELO money, and a variety of other restricted programs that we didn't spend that will carry over into this year. And then we had some teacher substitute savings. We really thought that we would be, our sub-cost would really skyrocket, but we saved about $27,000. We also planned for a lot of IAs and distance learning facilitators, and at the end, we saved $25,000 in addition to what we reduced the budget for previously on that. And then another area that we saved is textbooks. We saved about $80,000 because we had put some in the budget planning for spring orders and things like that, but we weren't really sure as we're starting this year. So that was a savings that we had. And then the remainder is some savings on utilities and miscellaneous department and academy expenditures there on that piece. When you look at, oops, I was going to go over some more of the details off to the side and stuff too. So we're closing and we remain fiscally sound here. Of that, our fund balance, as Joe had as mentioned earlier, fund balance is about 71% of total expenditures. But if what makes that up? It's very important to know the difference. So we have about over 132,000 related to the revolving fund, and that's like also includes cash awaiting deposit and things of that nature that are in an asset account right now. The 875,000 for restricted programs. We have 10% economic reserves of the 1.8 million. We have some program carryover in the unrestricted side of about 36,000 for projects that we thought were going to be finished by June 30th, but rolled into the new year. And then our other reserves for future obligations are about 1.4 million. And in your packet on, just let me refresh your memory, on the board summary that you're used to seeing on page 10, itemizes out all of those fund balance components if you want to see what the program reserves were. And then we have $5 million in cash reserves as well. So I added a pie chart, if you could go to the next one here. And so this is a pie chart of our fund balance, and this is percentages based on $13 million fund balance, not percentages of the expenditures on there. So you can see that economic uncertainties makes up about 14% of that 13 million, restricted programs 7%. Cash reserves are 38%, and then the other reserves were things that we put aside for facilities and for salary and benefits if we were declining, and special ed reserves, technology reserves. That makes up the other 40%. So with our fiscal, our financial reserve policy that the board had approved, our policy really states that we're striving for a 38% minimum, and that is 10% on economic uncertainties, another 25% for cash reserves for operations, and then to strive within the next 5 years to hit 3% worth of 3 months worth of operating expenses, if not more. So this budget or these financials do meet that. We're just a little over the 3-month expenditure thing. So we're in compliance with that area here. And a lot of these, with the other reserves and stuff, the board does have discretion to earmark and change what you'd like to see those set-asides for. So if you can go to the next one. So some of our financial highlights, again, starting with the LCFF, because it was flat funding and with all of the tweaks and a little bit of increase in ADA we were seeing about $21.28 increase per ADA over the prior year, and that was at 9,000 average per student. We also got some additional SPED funds for growth funding and COLA from the SELPA. And then I also put on here the SCAPE program because as we adopted the budget, we really thought because of COVID and closing the schools and providing daycare for staff and everything, that we would be using our reserves, our fund balance reserves for that program, which we started the year with about 150,000. And, but parents utilized the program and stuff. So we actually brought in more money than we thought. And we actually have a fund balance of like 68,000 and stuff. So I just want to give a great shout out. Dr. Ellis and their team did a great job with that. So I listed that on there. And so, yeah, so we have some operations money on there piece. So E-rate funds, we were able to collect about 30,000. And this, it was very challenging to get our rebates from our provider. It took about 9 months or so, but by the time we closed the books, we were able to get that and realize it was $30,000, which was a great thing. We also had the balance of our learning loss mitigation funds that we used, that came in to address COVID, and also the new in-person learning and expanded learning opportunities grant funds. Part of that money came in as well. And then the STIRS on behalf, which is what I always mention to you guys. On the expenditure side, so basically we saw a lot of savings, and we also saw a lot of one-time expenses due to COVID-19 as the impact of closing campus and getting new things and stuff. The good news also is with technology replacement plan, we purchased a lot of new computers for our staff, iPads and cards, replacement Chromebooks, and then also the additional Chromebooks that we needed to kind of get to that one-to-one for devices for our students. And then I also have the expenditure side for the STIRS on behalf. So Ziba, if you can go to the next one. We also funded our step and level increases for all staff. We increased some salary schedules to address some of the state minimum wage requirements to keep in compliance. We provided a 2% off the salary schedule bonus for all staff at the end of the year. We also provided summer school, distance learning facilitators, tutoring services, all with those grant funds and stuff too, that piece. So looking at our cash, one of the things that the state did for 2021 is in order to give us that unfunded COLA and reduce that 10% reduction that they were talking about, they backfilled it with some cash deferrals that we had talked about. And ideally that meant about $2.4 million to us. And the idea behind it was that they started deferring our cash from February through June. And then the plan originally was to pay it back between August 2021 through November 2021. With the 2021-22 state budget, they were able to give us back 100% of our money that they deferred as of August. So that's a good thing here. So our ending cash balance was at 13.5 million, and it's due to, you know, our underspending and the restricted carryover and everything that we have, as well as building our fund balance. So, okay, so these are the next steps for as we enter into the 21-22 budget cycle. So now that the books are closed, we're going to be updating them for our beginning balances that we had, which are our ending balances for 21-22. And we'll include any state changes up to that date. The first report that you are going to be getting from us is going to be in December for our first interim report. We may come to you with a budget update as this has been quite an interesting start of the year. We're noticing changes in enrollment, effects with absences, and then also our facilities and stuff too. So we want to make sure that the board has an accurate picture on what we're looking at prior to the first interim report coming out for you. And then the second report that we'll providing for 21-22 is our second interim report, which is not until March when you'll be approving that. And then we will go through the whole closing cycle for that. I'll open it up for questions.
I just have one. Regarding the savings and special ed, fewer contracts, that's because of COVID, right?
Well, it's actually, we project based on IEPs and things like that, the services and needs. So if, depending on the parent in COVID, if they did not have the student get those services, there was some savings there. We also project very conservatively to make sure that as we get new students throughout the year, we cover that as well. So, but Dr. Ellis can speak to this, but I believe we provided we provided the option for all legal services for our IEPs, and that some of that savings is a result of maybe parents not attending services.
Okay.
And part of that as well is that we had thought we were going to outsource for some of these services, and we were able to provide them with our service providers. So we've done a lot of work to hire staff versus having contractors.
Yes.
Yeah, cheaper money.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Wow.
Any other questions you can answer?
Thank you for the thoroughness.
I hope it wasn't too long.
You know, she's only off by $31,000 on revenues. That's the part that always amazes me every year. How close she gets it. Good job, Leah.
Thank you.
Well, I know expenditures, I really appreciate, and I want to thank the board and stuff too for your conservatism. And, sometimes you will be asked to project underspending and things like that. But I know that our administrative staff and our board would like to see the fallout and the changes and what is, what did we spend extra, what didn't we, spend and why and stuff. So I appreciate your conservativeness.
Thank you. Okay, with that, may I have a motion to approve the 2020-21 unaudited financial actuals?
I so moved.
Second, please. Okay, thank you, Karen. Thanks, Bria. Roll call vote, Karen.
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Tina? Yes. Maria?
Yes.
Preeti?
Yes.
Jennifer, a yes. Ashante?
Yes.
Okay. Moving right along, Mr. Dobson, resolution 09.13. It's moving too fast.
Sorry.
Vla Course Certification.
So in short, I would just say that this is the same resolution that we've approved, I think now for the third time. The primary difference here is just to reflect our current course load. You'll notice that there is a bit of a reduction in the number of courses being offered. Primary reason for that is tied to the fact that we are now offering some of those courses through dual enrollment. So for example, in the past, we had offered a psychology class on campus. Now that's accomplished through dual enrollment. In addition, Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. Can you get a little closer to your mic? You're really quiet for us.
Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me better now? I've got it right up. I've got my headphones in.
That might be why, but it's a little bit louder, but we're okay. We'll listen real intently.
So yeah, I was just going to say it's the same board minutes, or I'm sorry, the course approval that was approved previously. The primary difference just it reflects our current course offering. There is a number of courses that are no longer offered, and that's because we have more through dual enrollment. And did you guys hear that okay? It sounds like I did get a text saying that online that we could hear.
You're better now.
Okay. And then we do have one new course this year, which I'm actually teaching. It is the documentary film class. It's an elective, and therefore it doesn't need to be one of the courses that are offered at PFAA. All of our core courses, graduation requirements are obviously offered both at PFAA and a VLA equivalent.
Great. Any questions for Mr. Dobson?
Could I get that last statement you made, could I get a little clarification? It's part of VLA but not, or part of PFA or not? That class, that new class you're teaching?
Yeah, so the course-based, this course-based certification of independent study, we're required to offer the same core courses, graduation requirements as PFAA, and we have that. We do have some different electives, such as study skills, which is a VLA specific course, and then also the documentary film class that I'm teaching now. Again, they are credit bearing, but they are not graduation requirements. They're not the core courses.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Maria. Thanks, Kevin. Any other questions?
Is that a yes or no? No.
Okay, cool. All right, so may I have a motion? Okay. May I have a motion to approve resolution 09.13.2021.01 VLA course certification?
I need a motion to approve the VLA certification course.
May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Gina. Roll call vote, Ashante.
Yes.
Jennifer, I'm a yes. Preeti?
Yes.
Maria?
Yes.
Gina?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Karen? Yes. All right, thank you very much. Oh, next section, which includes the beloved COVID-19 update.
Continues.
Let me sigh.
Yes, I was told COVID was over on June 15th.
Yeah, I'm
here
actually,
we still are.
I'm gonna talk to you about that today. We'll take it offline.
But before I go into my COVID update, I have an enrollment report.
Yep.
You get me for 3 items. So the first thing that you have in your packet, so this is item L1, is our enrollment update. And these are our numbers as of August 31st. Just as a reminder to the board and any community members watching out there, enrollment is always a little wavy the first couple of weeks of school because we're learning people moved in the middle of summer, we're moving people on the waiting list, that sort of thing. So as you look at the numbers though, I'm going to start with leading edge at the top. So when these numbers were pulled, leading edge was actually at 258. We had originally budgeted 261. They are actually at 261 as of today. So those spots are full. PACT, as you can see here, as of August 31st is actually under enrolled by 50 from what we originally budgeted. I'm going to come back to PACT after I talk about the other academies. PFAA, as of the day these numbers were pulled, was under by 11. Based on what we're seeing in enrollment trends, they're probably going to end up being under by about between 8 and 10. This largely has to do with some high school programming. We were expecting more 11th and 12th graders to return than who actually did return. Some of the students moved out of the area, that sort of thing. So we've actually been offering spots to 9th graders when we can. What is interesting though is our 9th grade arts program is completely full. And so we might have a 9th grader on the waiting list who's really interested in, let's say, percussion, but there's space in dance. And so we've had a couple of 9th graders turn us down for that reason. So we're kind of re-examining our master schedule for the following year and that sort of thing like that. Star Academy, when these numbers were pulled, was at 597 out of 600. They're in the process of filling to 600. They have healthy waiting lists. And then VLA is under enrolled by 30 at the moment. So I think the logical question looking at these numbers is, well, what's going on with the independent study programs, especially in the middle of a global pandemic, right? So what we've kind of noticed is we actually, by midsummer, these two programs were full and actually had some waiting lists. But as school started, the Delta variant also came back. And so we had a couple of things happen. In some cases, there was a significant chunk of students that really wanted to go into our site-based programs. So as we were starting the school year, we saw people moving out of the site-based programs because either they moved out of state, maybe they decided to attend another high school, or maybe they've actually decided to attend the district's completely virtual program. So as a result, PACT and VLA students went into our site-based academy. So we had a little bit filling up that way. We also, this is more of a PACT thing than a VLA thing. Quite a few families reported that economically they could not continue homeschooling anymore. Both parents, if it's a 2-household family, needed to return to work. So that sort of led them away from homeschooling. Some of those families may have also decided to attend a completely immersive virtual program because they could no longer do the homeschooling type thing. And then VLA has kind of been a little bit of an interesting situation because, VLA is an independent study program, but you still come to campus. You don't come to campus as often, but you still come to campus. So for those families that are very, I'm just gonna say like COVID sensitive for whatever that reason is, they're not really interested in coming to that program either. So right now, both Kevin and Alicia are working on doing some referral programs, sort of, refer a friend if you have anyone that's interested in this program to increase enrollment a little bit. In Alicia's case, we actually saw this trend starting to form as she had a couple of staff members who let her know that they weren't gonna be returning. And so we very intentionally did not fill those positions because we wanted to sort of see where these numbers landed. And so one of the things Anita and then Alicia at PACT and Kevin at VLA are gonna be doing along with me over the next couple of weeks is really starting to look at, okay, what have been our actual revenues in terms of students actually enrolling, and what have been our actual expenditures in terms of actually placement on the salary schedule, not filling positions that are vacant, so that we can present a more accurate picture to the board in terms of where we stand with those two programs in terms of under enrollment versus enrollment. Also in the case of PACT, Alicia's been doing some surveying of the families. And because one of the things we were thinking about is like, well, should we just start like a virtual program since everyone else seems to be starting a virtual program? But the feedback that we receive from all the parents currently enrolled in that program is no, they actually really want the homeschool format with the workshops that we provide, but they're all sort of in a holding pattern as to what's going to happen with vaccinations for 5 to 11-year-olds. And saying, that when my child can be vaccinated, then we're going to take more advantage of the workshops. So it's kind of leading us to wonder if we might see some changes in enrollment patterns when, even for PACT and VLA, when the vaccinations become available for the younger students. Because those families that are completely, concerned about COVID are looking for virtual programs that are supporting their kids throughout the day. But some of the feedback that we've heard from those families is they're not completely in love with what they're getting, but that's also what they feel like they feel safest with right now. So we're kind of suspecting that PACT and VLA, as it happens in other years, might actually go up in enrollment, as we start moving into months post-vaccinations. But we're a little unknown right now. And, Anita, Alicia, Kevin, and I all budget pretty conservatively. So we're really in that phase of like, okay, well, let's assume the numbers just stay where they're at. What do our actual revenues look like? What do our actual expenditures look like?
So how many people are coming for those workshops in person?
I don't have those numbers off the top of my head, but I do know that Alicia, so we're in quarter 1 right now. So for quarter 2, we're moving more of those workshops to virtual.
Oh.
Because it's actually been really interesting. Either you have people that are like hardcore, I'm coming, don't put me on the computer, or we have I don't ever want to set foot in the building, I only want to be on the computer kind of group. And so we've been trying to balance that need of like, how do we support everyone? What we've also been doing too is, in my next COVID update, I'll be talking how we have a lot of independent study needs that are going on with our site-based programs. So another thing that we have happening is one of the new educational advisors at PAC is actually supporting the STAR Academy program with some of the independent study work that's going on there. Other enrollment questions I can answer. All right. With that, would you like me to move on to our Ovid update?
Please,
Okay.
it wouldn't be the same without one.
Just wanna, Ms. Holmes gonna bring up my slides.
How's everyone doing? Good, good.
He's not wanting to cooperate.
It's just one of those things. It's spinning, it's thinking. I see you all on my computer.
Yeah, just the pinwheel.
And then twice that.
Oh, no.
Something happened.
There you go, so hit okay on that little thing that just popped up. And then maybe.
Just maybe.
I click on Chrome in the bottom of this. And there you go. And then you can put it in. All right, so yes, we do have a COVID update. COVID is still here, in case you missed the memo. So we're talking a little bit about what our response has been since school opened. So we go to the next slide. So these are just some glimpses of on-campus life. And I think the thing I'm most proud of right now is that even though we're still navigating a pandemic much longer than any of us ever thought, we're doing everything we can to make school as normal as possible and as connected as possible for the kids. So on the left, you see some pictures. Last week we had the Leading Edge, the first flag football game and the first volleyball game. And our kids and our fans, and we actually participate in a league with other Natomas Unified Schools. So we were hosting Leroy Green actually this particular week. But all of the kids, all the fans doing an awesome job with COVID protocol. So I know sometimes on the news, we see all these people not necessarily following the rules. That is not the case at Natomas Charter School. People are following the rules and keeping each other safe. Similarly, our arts program continues. So there's a picture of Mr. Spiva's percussion class. What you can't really totally see in the picture is they are wearing masks that are specially designed with to play musical instruments. We're in the process of ensuring all the instruments have bell covers and that sort of thing on, so we can have it as safe as possible. You also see Karen Pollard's acting class in the upper right-hand corner, and they're working on monologues and dialogues and really, getting engaged when they're as normal. And then in the bottom picture there, that's actually lunch at Star Academy. You can see we have all of our plexiglass barriers up. We also have a bunch of additional picnic tables out with umbrellas, so everyone still has some shade. We can't all fit under the awning, but we're able to do all of our lunches outside at Star Academy, which has been awesome. So just as a reminder, our theme for this year is about reconnection, right? So how do we build belonging with each other and the kids? How do we continue to ground ourselves in our mission and vision, but also coaching students to lead for the future? And right now, I think the coaching that we're doing with students on leading for the future is how you navigate a global pandemic and how you're flexible and how you're adaptable and how you're navigating different things. Next slide. So these are just kind of going deeper, that building belonging with each other. Next one. Grounding in our mission and vision. Next one. And then coaching students to lead for the future. So moving on, we talked about at our last meeting that our approach to COVID this year really is 4 things. So Ziva, can I just kind of click through them? So the first one is, recognizing that this is bigger than us, and so we have to be humble and have lots of humility throughout all of this. We want our school to stay open, so we're working really hard with our families and our students and each other. And those are all sorts of different actions, from making sure we're wearing masks and getting vaccinated when we can, to also staying home when we have symptoms, even though if it's super inconvenient and it's not what anyone wants to do, we're committed to doing that, to keeping each other safe. Kindness, treating each other with kindness and respect throughout all of this. And then, conviction. We're going to continue to follow the public health protocols, as they adapt and we learn new things from the scientists. So this is just a little, perspective in terms of, this is the context in which we're operating right now. So these are the Sacramento County public health COVID cases per 100,000 residents since actually last September, since September 1st. And the thing I really want the board to see is that, we've been navigating COVID rates as high as we had in the last winter when campuses were closed. And so, we've been navigating that, but keeping our campuses open and operating safely. Just go ahead and keep looking. So in terms of the latest from Sacramento County Public Health, we're plateauing around 30 cases per 100,000 residents. About 90% of populations still continue to be unvaccinated individuals. They are seeing a pretty significant increase in deaths right now. That's actually one of the things that's most concerning the public health department. And that the patients that are in the hospitals are definitely younger than the patients that we saw in the fall and the winter. And so we really are continuing to work together on that. We're seeing COVID cases here on campus. As a board, you guys have been getting our regular notices and stuff. And so you can see since the first week of school, they've gone up actually pretty dramatically, both staff member and student cases. You go ahead and keep clicking. And then similarly with exposure and quarantine, they've been going up in sort of a similar trajectory. Last week was a little bit lower in terms of both cases and the number of students who had to quarantine or were possible exposure. So just kind of clicking through these slides, as you look at this data, there's basically three things. So there's at-home quarantine, modified quarantine, and vaccinated exposure. So just a reminder, at-home quarantine means the kid has to stay at home. We try to limit those to the greatest extent possible. But they occur when either two things are happening. The student is exposed off campus, or the student is exposed at school in an unmasked situation, which our only unmasked situation is at lunch. And so that you all and anyone watching at home are aware, we ask the public health department every week, multiple times a week, how we can make lunch not be an unmasked exposure. Because we have the plexiglass barriers in place, we're trying to separate the kids out at STAR, that sort of thing. But right now, they're still telling us we have to count it as an unmasked exposure. So for unvaccinated individuals, if they are exposed at lunch, that ends up often being a 10-day quarantine.
Even if they're like going like this?
Yeah, if they're doing like that, we can probably get closer to it, but really, yeah, I mean, if the mask is coming off at all. Modified quarantine only applies to students. So the idea is, let's imagine we are a group of unvaccinated students and one of us ends up testing positive. We might all be considered close contacts to each other depending on how we interacted in the classroom. However, because we have our masks on, we can continue to remain at school. We cannot, though, participate in extracurricular activities, and that includes our BASE or SCAPE program. That is also an ongoing question that we keep asking the public health department. But right now, you can come to school, but then, when that bell rings at 2:55 or 3:25, whatever time it is for you, the idea is that you're going home because you are technically under a 10-day quarantine. They're just providing this little waiver for children to be able to continue attending school. They also have to test twice during the quarantine period. And then the last one down at the bottom is just the vaccinated exposure. So these are individuals, they are fully vaccinated, they can remain at school even if they're exposed with a mask, without a mask. The expectation, or the recommendation I should say, is that they test within 3 to 7 days of the exposure just to monitor for any potential breakthrough cases. In terms of contact tracing, you can click these kind of quickly and I'll just talk. So just little context, our current process, a typical case takes 2 to 3 hours. It involves an interview with the case, identifying any close contacts, identifying anyone who's gonna have to remain at home, pulling all the data and sending out the notifications. So that's largely been Christy, London, and me working together. We're gonna be kind of modifying this a little bit as we're moving forward. So looking ahead, we're hoping for declining case counts because the fewer cases, the less contact tracing we have to do. We're continuing to look for ways to automate the process. At the beginning of school, we were literally calling everyone by hand, and we quickly realized, oh my goodness, we're never going to be able to do that. And we're building out a little bit more of a contact tracing team with our school nurse, and then 2 what we're calling COVID case managers. These are administrative assistants that are supporting everything from helping parents understand the quarantine protocols and getting their test results in or whatever might be required, to also helping families get signed up for independent study, make sure that they're getting the work in a timely manner and completing the work. Just some data points as of Friday. We've had at this point 0 on-campus cases for students. We have had 1 on-campus transmission case between 2 staff members who ate lunch together. About 56% of the cases originate from household exposure. So a sibling, a parent, someone like a grandparent who spent the night, something like that. But we have about another 28% of cases coming from community exposure. So this is gymnastics class where you were exposed to someone who was positive. Something happened at Little League, went to a birthday party, something along those lines. In terms of quarantine numbers, we've had about 31% of the individuals that have been close contacts have been vaccinated exposures, which is great because they continue coming to school as normal. And we've had about 49% who've been on a modified quarantine, which is also great because keep in mind, if this was last year, all of those individuals would be going home for 10 days, no questions asked. So because we do use universal masking here at Natomas Charter School, and this has been a non-contentious issue for our families, everyone is compliant, it's meant that we've actually could keep everyone at school. Whereas a lot of communities where this wasn't happening are now finding out kind of the hard way that they can't keep all of their kids at school and they're having to send them home. And then we have about 20% that have had to do an at-home quarantine. In terms of vaccination rates, we're at about 70% of eligible students are fully vaccinated, and about 60% of the eligible close contacts that we've had have been vaccinated. 98% of our staff are fully vaccinated. And we are seeing breakthrough cases. I think everyone should just sort of acknowledge that that is a reality that's happening. So we've had 14 of our cases that are from students or staff, about 30% have been breakthrough cases. And what a breakthrough case is that someone who is fully vaccinated and they're showing symptoms. So we've actually seen that 14 times. And really what that's, you don't have to go back. What it's always been about is a prolonged indoor exposure. So I sat with someone at dinner for an extended period of time. A sick relative had spent the night at our house. I carpooled with someone to some event, something like that. So I share that, for anyone in the room or at home who is fully vaccinated, still wear your mask. That's definitely something we're seeing in our own contact tracing data is even if you are vaccinated, I mean, it does seem to shorten the illness. You might have no symptoms or just symptoms for a couple of days, but more importantly than that, we should all still act like it's around us and be wearing our masks, and that's something we've been working with students on. Since we last met, there have been some updates to the public health procedures. So just a reminder, face coverings indoor, it must be worn by all indoors, vaccinated or unvaccinated. Outdoors, it's technically optional, but recommended when you cannot physically distance. There are some counties that have started implementing mandatory requirements for outdoor masking for students. That has not happened yet in Sacramento County, but it could be something in the future, we don't know. Lunch procedures, we are primarily outdoors. We have that plexiglass at Star Academy. In terms of updates to exposure protocols, we do recommend testing for vaccinated individuals now. That wasn't necessarily the case back in August when we last talked. And if you are, the other thing that happened is, let's say you're a fully vaccinated individual, but someone in your household comes down with COVID. You actually have to automatically separate from that person within your household and isolate from them for at least 10 days. And when that 10-day isolation period is over, then you can return to school, even if you're fully vaccinated. So we have had a couple of situations with that, with staff members who are fully vaccinated, but maybe their individual children or not. They've had to remain at home for 10 days, separated in the household before they could come back to school and test during that time period to make sure they themselves did not become sick. I mentioned that, with the music department, the updated guidance is for bell covers and masks, or trying to find ways maybe where music can be played outdoors. And then we did get a new public health order since we all last met, which was about vaccinations. So as a K-12 employer, we have to evaluate the vaccination record of all workers. Workers are employees, contractors, or volunteers. For anyone who is unvaccinated, they have to participate in weekly COVID testing. It is effective October 15th, but we very intentionally implemented it early, mainly so we could help navigate any questions along the way. If someone didn't have their vaccination record easily accessible, we could help them with that. Volunteers, at this point, we have very limited volunteers coming onto campus, but we are going to ask for some help with testing because we're doing surveillance testing at Star Academy and traffic duty out here. But because we also have limited testing capacity, we're going to be asking that all, at least for the time being, all volunteers that are on campus are fully vaccinated, and they are having to provide that vaccination information to the school to be in compliance with that public health order. And then any contractors we have on campus, and these aren't like, the Sonatrol guy comes to fix the camera. That's not what we're talking about. Contractors in this case are like our special education contractors. They're not employees of the school, but they're considered one of our workers, so they themselves have to be fully vaccinated or test as well. Campus closures, this is the $25,000 question I get asked all the time right now. Like, what's the plan for closing campus? When we get to a certain number, does it happen? Okay, to be really clear, there are no plans for campus closures. The public health department's goal is to keep us open all year long. Before we are closing campuses, we might look at some sort of situation where, let's say they could see that there was a bunch of cases epidemiologically linked on campus. I don't know that ever happens. But if they could see that, then what they might do is have a testing team come out from the California Department of Public Health and ask everyone at the school to take a COVID test to identify who's positive, who's not positive at that time. But the goal would be to have the school remain open and exclude out any individuals who tested positive. Next. Oh, tied to clean outbreaks. So probably the biggest headache that we're navigating right now is absenteeism, which will show up on the next slide. There you go, yeah. So realize that at the beginning of the school year, for our site-based academy, so STAR, Leading Edge, and PFA, our absenteeism rates are like maybe 2 to 3%. I mean, it's the beginning of the school year. Everyone's happy to be back at school. Usually we don't have a whole lot of illnesses going on right now. Usually we don't have any independent study requests for the first 3 weeks of school. Well, we started that way the very first Friday of the school year. So these data points on this graph are actually the 5 Fridays of the school year we've had so far. And the reason why we're looking at Friday is actually Friday is usually the worst attendance day of the week, right? Like if everyone's gonna take a day off, it's probably on a Friday. And so what you can see is on the very first Friday of the school year, which was like the 3rd day of the school year, we were kind of in the like 1 to maybe 5% sort of range depending on the academy. But then that quickly shot up to not this most recent Friday, but the Friday before. So it was the Friday of Labor Day weekend, so I do recognize that sometimes people may take that off. But I would say that from what we were hearing from families, what we're seeing on campus, it wasn't that everyone was taking up early for a Labor Day weekend. It was a lot of, my kid has a cough. I'm not sure if that's COVID or if that's something else. Someone in our family has COVID-like symptoms, so we're gonna go ahead and keep people home. My 6th grader got a notice that she has to quarantine because she was an unmasked exposure. She's not positive, but I'm gonna go ahead and keep my 3rd grader home too, just in case. So one of the things that I've really appreciated about our Natomas Charter School community and families is they are being very intentional about making sure they're not contributing to community-wide spread with COVID-19. They're being very responsible and very intentional. It is though showing up in our absenteeism rates. If you want to click that, I have some things on the side. So why is this happening? So it really goes down to people following the COVID protocol, staying home when sick. And you can't, if like, let's say your child has COVID-like symptoms, the idea is that they cannot return to campus until they have a negative COVID-19 test. So that's why we're offering like constant on-campus testing. There's also rapid testing that's available every school day morning from 7 to 9 a.m. at the district office that our families can access. But the idea is that you have to have a negative COVID test and the symptoms have to be gone for 24 hours. That's the current requirement for coming back to campus. So in terms of instructional impacts, it is, obviously leading to disrupted learning, right? Because kids missing 2 days here, missing 3 days here, we're losing instructional time. But we're also seeing financial impacts because schools are funded on 2 things: how many kids are there and how often they come to school. And in California, it doesn't matter whether it's excused absence or unexcused absence, you're absent because of COVID, you're absent because you went to Hawaii. They all financially impact us the same. And also when we have employees out, we have a financial impact as well because we have substitute teachers, right? So a sub might cost us up to $250 a day. You can go to the next one. Student absences are actually about $65 a day. And so a rough estimate looking at absences since school started, we probably have about a $30,000 to $40,000 reduction in funding just based on kind of that $65 a day amount from the 3 site-based academies. So one of the things that we're really focused on right now is helping families sign up for independent study because independent study is our only means actually of recouping that ADA. Remember, distance learning is no longer permitted under AB 30. So it's not just like we can turn on a bunch of Zoom cameras and say, we'll see you at school tomorrow. There's a whole process that we have to have families go through in terms of signing paperwork. Independent study is also optional. We can't compel someone to be an independent study. We can ask really nicely, but that's all we can do. They have to sign a master agreement. Independent study must also be offered by districts and county offices. It doesn't have to be offered by charter schools, but Natomas Charter School does offer it. There's supposed to be a supervising teacher for long-term independent study, and long-term independent study is anything over 15 days in the entire school year. So we're just acting like every kid going on independent study is potentially going on long-term independent study because there's no way that we're gonna be able to be like, oh, Karen, okay, at day 14, here's the supervising teacher, because tomorrow's day 15. We're not gonna be able to track that. So we have teachers working with kids daily if they're TK through 3, and at least weekly if they're 4 through 12, but actually most of our supervising teachers, which are our TOSAs, have the ability for individuals to check in during office hours. Short-term independent study is really this quarantine independent study idea. So it is officially up to 14 days, but we're building some structures there like they're long-term. Can be for quarantine, could be for other reasons though. You know, my aunt died and we're gonna go to a funeral, or we're gonna do a college tour. You know, it can be for other reasons too. And then in terms of long-term independent study, that's where there's that daily check-in with the teacher or staff member, that tiered re-engagement process, and a plan for returning to in-person instruction. So these are just our current numbers to give you a sense. So keep in mind, this time of the school year, we would have under 5 students who have done independent study. As of Friday, we had 100 at STAR, 13 at Leading Edge, and 48 at PFA. These are just families who asked for independent study. There are other families who never asked. And so one of the things we're trying to work on right now is contacting the families. This is kind of more of a moving forward thing, but, oh, you're gonna be out tomorrow? No problem, here's this independent study thing. Also looking ahead, we're trying to streamline the master agreement process. You can just click all of them. And so the biggest thing that's been helpful is that the legislature did pass a bill last week, AB 167. And probably the nicest thing about AB 167 is it will allow us to give every family a master agreement that you could sign tomorrow, and it's good for the whole entire school year. Whereas right now what happens is, let's say your child's gonna go on an independent study on Wednesday, I actually can't have you sign the master agreement until Wednesday. The first day of independent study and the day you sign the master agreement have to match each other. And we actually have to do separate master agreements every time your kid goes on independent study. So it's 2 days here and 5 days there and 7 days there. And it's a total paperwork nightmare. So it is, AB 167 is currently sitting on the governor's desk. So we're awaiting tomorrow's recall to see if it gets signed and who signs and all that sort of thing. But then the other thing with an AB 167, and this is important for the board here, but also for any community members watching at home, is that the legislature under AB 130 in the summer was pretty straightforward. Independent kids are coming to school, and if they're not coming to school, they're going to independent study. And really they doubled down on that with AB 167. They made the language even more firm that independent study is what you're doing. And so one of the pieces that, I hope that the legislature maybe takes up at a later date is relooking at the attendance challenges that we're all navigating, because in my conversations with other superintendents, we're all losing ADA at the numbers that we're seeing, if not higher. And there's no real provision at this point for correcting that. Districts, because of the way district funding is done versus charter school funding, charter schools feel it in the same year as when they lose ADA. Districts, it's delayed by a year. So this is all gonna hit them a year from now, where it's gonna hit us right away. So as charter school leaders, we're really trying to sound the alarm to the legislators that, hey, this impacts us right now, but it's actually gonna impact everyone else next school year. So we need to be thinking about this, and how is there a way that we can make sure schools are not find themselves in financially challenging situations because of this. So just moving along, any questions? There's a lot of information about COVID and independent study, case rates.
Do you happen to know how many charter schools are in California?
It's about 1,300 charter schools. It's about the same number as school districts, where there's kind of like equal numbers of both. All right. Well, that was our COVID update. And then the next thing that I'll get to talk about when I'm done is board of director terms. So September is always our month where we review our terms, because historically we renew terms in October. So as you look at the page that's up there on the screen, Prithi's coming up officially in November, but we'll probably bring her back to an October term just to sort of make life a little bit more logical when we remember things. So I know Prithi's planning on renewing as Star Academy rep. Maria is terming out of her ability to be a leading edge rep because she now has a child at PFAA, although she has expressed interest in staying on as a community member role, which would provide some nice stability to our board. And remember, our bylaws say that we can have as few as 5 and as many as 13 board members, so we have that flexibility. Sean is interested in continuing as well. We might just align his term with October as well. Ashante shared that she would be interested in renewing. And Jonathan shared that he would be interested in renewing as board advisor for one more year. So the biggest thing that I need kind of a little bit of information from the board right now is that on that leading edge parent representative, in our bylaws, it talks about forming a committee, an appointment committee. And so the appointment committee, basically what will happen is tomorrow, we're gonna send out communications to the leading edge families, letting them know that we have a vacancy on our board. Anyone who's interested in applying, there's a little application that they fill out, they get some letters of recommendation from other family members. And what we're looking at doing is forming an appointment committee that would have no more than 3 board members on it. Maria has expressed interest as the current leading edge parent in participating, being one of the people. But they would interview candidates with Vasa and I. And the idea is that the appointment committee makes a recommendation to the board for the October meeting of which candidate we should potentially appoint. So the 2 things are, I just need to know, is there anyone else who would be interested in being on the appointment committee? We're looking at doing interviews the afternoon, early evening of September 27th and September 28th. So calendaring helps you.
You said afternoon?
Yeah, we're looking at like that 4 to 6 p.m. window. Historically, when we've done these, we found that kind of works best for most parents with jobs and other fun things going on.
And that's gonna be in person?
In person, yeah. We're looking at the Monday the 27th or Tuesday the 28th from 4 to 6 p.m. And it's okay if you need to get back to me, it's totally fine too.
You guys, anybody in the room? You can't do it? You know, Gia?
Only if it's on the 28th, but I can on the 27th.
Okay, good to know. And does the 28th and the 27th work for you?
I think so.
Okay.
I'll have to double check.
I can do the 28th.
Okay. We were kind of leaning towards the 28th because there's something else going on the 27th, but I'm flexible. So the 28th?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's planned for the 28th from 4 to 6 p.m. would be when we do interviews, and then that'll be somewhat dictated by how many candidates we get.
Yeah, so, okay.
So it
I'll
sounds
send
like,
out calendar invites for y'all.
Okay, is Shantae still on the line?
Yes, Ashante, you're still here?
I am.
Are you interested in being on that committee?
I'm actually supposed to be starting a new position that Monday, so I didn't know that I could commit to doing a 4 to 6 o'clock interview.
Fair enough, okay.
so it sounds like at this point that we have Gina, Jennifer, and Maria. Potentially.
And I'm happy to give up my seat to someone else if they are interested.
And being the chair. You're not going anywhere.
Come on. Give up my gilded spot.
Oh, you mean your chair on the appointment, or your position on the
My
appointment?
position on the, yeah, can you read the chart, please?
You're not going anywhere.
22.
You're not going anywhere. You're like concrete boots around your feet. All right, so we, I think we have some a place for Ziba and I to start, so thank you all very much. All right, now it's Dr. Ellis's turn to come up to the table.
Hi, Dr. Ellis.
Hello.
Should I tell everybody what we're looking at? First reading of board policy 6164, independent educational evaluation. The fabulous Dr. Ellis is joining us.
Yes, oh, I love to hear fabulous anytime. So the independent education evaluation policy that you have before you, when parents with students who have IEPs, part of their parental safeguards is their ability to request a public expense and independent educational evaluation. So this policy just allows us to let them know what their rights are and sets the parameters. So when they do request it, it's not just, I want anybody in the world, because that's not actually true. There are limits that the SELVA has, and so that's what this policy reflects.
Great. And this is our first read, right? So we're
This
not
is the
adopting it
first read,
tonight.
yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
Excellent, thank you.
Um,
And then the second policy
5142.2, safe routes to school.
This is, I don't know how to frame this best way. So our elementary school students in 4th and 5th grade, they are allowed to walk home with parent permission. We never had a policy in place. We always just had a form. So the policy goes with the form to allow parents to know, yes, we want to encourage safe routes, that we are in communication with public safety about things like stop signs and crosswalks and having the police officers come out and give tickets sometimes. And this policy reflects that, and it gives the form as an addendum so that we will have parents fill that out.
Great.
And this will also be added to, a brief section will be added to the handbook next year.
That's great. Any questions? I'd like to recognize Dr. Ellis's mask. I love it.
Oh,
For those who can't see it, it says love, empathy, compassion, inclusion, justice, and kindness.
Always kindness.
Yes, it's back to kindness.
So these two policies will be coming back to the board as action items in next month, yeah.
Okay.
So if you have edits or things between now and then, send them Ziva's way, and then we'll note that for all of you to see, suggested.
Okay. Joe, do you have more comments for us?
Only good things. So a couple of quick comments. So PFAA, they're the first in-person show of the year. Yay! Gone Missing actually is going to be opening on September 29th. So it's going to be in the black box, September 29th, September 30th, and October 1st. We'll have COVID protocols in place in terms of masks. Any audience members also have to provide vaccination information or a COVID-19 test within the last 72 hours. All those details can be found on the website. Leading Edge sports are out and about. We have games occurring on Tuesdays and Thursdays, often on this campus, for both flag football and volleyball right now. So if you want to come see the kids playing sports, we'd love to have you. And then between now and our next board meeting, we all have fall break on October 2nd. And so we are very excited about fall break starting on October 2nd. So school resumes on October 11th, and then we'll be back together as a board on October 18th.
Awesome. Okay. Board of Director comments. Going once. Okay. Future board agenda items.
Got lots.
You do? See, but when do you jump on our agenda for like that form you need? Is it time?
Oh yeah. It starts like tomorrow.
I know, because it's due in April and you don't want to chase me down.
The 700 form?
Yeah.
Crazy one.
Okay, if nobody has anything else, I do believe we can adjourn.
Yay.
Okay, thanks everybody. Adjourn the meeting, 7:36.
Thank you, Sean.
Adjourn.
Thank you, Sean.
Bye.